I gotta have this. Hi, hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Jer. I was browsing around through videos and I saw one of the coolest videos I've seen in probably a very long time. It was someone ranking all of the video games that they played 2 years ago. So it's kind of an old video, but I thought it was so fun and I've never done anything like this before. And I am a gamer on Twitch. I do a lot. I've never really sat down to talk about all the games that I played and how I liked them all. So I wanted to do that today. So I'm gonna be talking about every single game that I played in 2023. I know it's a little late, but that's fine, we roll with it. I did not include a good handful of games, specifically little mobiles that I played, things that were gifted in that realm of mobiles. Those were one-off sponsors and I don't really count those too much, but I do want to give one special shout out to Brick City, which was a mobile game that I took last year and it was very, very fun. They're not sponsoring me anymore, but if they wanted to, I would gladly work with Brick City again. It was one of the few mobile games that I've ever played that I thought, wow, this is special. It's got a Lego vibe to it. It's got a Minecrafty vibe. It was fun, and it's set in another world in the future. So there's a cute story behind it. It's not just one of those point and click mobiles where you're killing zombies or whatever. Without further ado, let's get into it and talk about all these games that I played. I think I had 50. There were so many that I played last year. You know, I just realized that I have these in, and I don't need these here. I did 5 categories altogether. We've got Immaculate Vibes, we've got Strong, which is solidly really good, but wasn't perfect. Could have been better. That's my nice way of saying, you already know. And then had a lot of personality. Have you ever hooked up with someone and they were not quite to the expectations that you wanted? And maybe you just left feeling unsatisfied, but they were probably really nice. And then the wasn't great category, and I'm hoping that I don't have to put too many down there. So let's start with Doomsday Paradise. This is an indie game. I hate comparing games, I'm really not in the business of doing so, but this game was essentially a rip of Monster Prom. If Monster Prom is an ocean, Doomsday Paradise is a pond. And that's not to say that it's bad, it's a similar vein of something. I didn't find myself instantly in love with a lot of the characters like I did with Monster Prom. I think it's a really cute game, but it definitely has a lot of potential to grow upwards if they want to refine the franchise. Next is Agatha Christie's ABC Murders, and this was a challenging game. Not because of any particular story things, because story is A+. Agatha Christie writes great novels, great mystery. This is a wonderful adaptation. My problem is a lot of the gameplay was really clunky and hard to work with. It was frustrating at points. Actually, it's going down a notch. I found myself really frustrated with a lot of the gameplay. I felt like I was constantly just clicking things incessantly, trying to find what went where and what I was missing. I wasn't paying attention to any of the extra dialogue because I was just trying to get through some parts, and I don't think a game should make you do that. Next is Pokemon Violet. This is a game that definitely could have been a lot better. I think there was so much story in Violet and Scarlet. I really enjoyed a lot of elements of it. It's got one of my favorite gym battle themes probably in years of Pokemon. I love that they took the Sword Shield gym music and readapted that for their own game. I like all the Pokemon. I like the region. I like the open worldness. I like the gym leaders. I just felt like it was missing something. It felt not very fleshed out. And I want to fall in love right away with characters. And I found myself craving more from them. And I also didn't like Nimona at all. I thought she was kind of an insufferable rival. And then the champion just really didn't speak to me in ways that I wanted her to. I thought she was just kind of flat. Please, Pokemon fans, don't roast me because I love Pokemon. I'm such a huge fan. I can already feel people raising pitchforks and getting ready to burn my apartment down over this opinion. But I just didn't like all the elements of it, and I didn't find myself being excited every time. I wanted more. And I feel like the second time you go and visit the gyms in post-game, you find out so much more information that would have made the gameplay more interesting the first time around. I wish that I knew some of these stories, like the bug gym leader being a bug gym trainer because she's so close to the university that young trainers who come to her first won't have too much of a challenge. That would have been nice to learn early on, maybe the first time. Next up is Dinkum, and Dinkum is Minecraft-like, with elements of a farmer. I like so much of Dinkum. Again, I found myself getting frustrated. I found myself getting upset that things were not going smoothly. And I recently picked it back up, and it still felt like it lacked finesse. And I think that's the biggest thing about Dinkum, is that it just seems to be lacking something in gameplay, in mechanics, in story, that just doesn't suck me in the way that I want it to. For a farmer life sim with Minecraft elements, I want to be devastated by a game like this. And I didn't find myself thinking that I wanted to pour hours of my life into it. Speaking of which, a game that I have poured hours of my life into, that I want to keep putting hours of my life into, is Coral Island. Now, I know that a lot of people don't vibe with the graphic style of Coral Island. For me, it really hits a nice spot between where a lot of farmers try to go, which is a little more pixely because that's sort of the trend now, and it pulls from those Harvest Moon inspirations that I really love to see. I love how hot the cast is. Everyone on the island that's of adult age is super sexy, and that appeals to me. Dialogue is great, the writing is great. I like that it takes the farmer genre and applies ocean conservation. It talks about nature mindfulness. I love how much inclusion is in the game because the real world looks diverse. You don't just walk into a city and everyone is white and thin. In Coral Island, there are people of all different heights and body sizes and skin tones. And I think that's beautiful, and I wish that we celebrated that more rather than harp on a graphical issue. Because games like Wind Waker have a very specific type of graphic, and people didn't want to play Wind Waker, even though it had so much to offer. Most Zelda fans would argue that Wind Waker was one of the strongest Zelda games of all time, and then there are a lot of people who would not give it a chance because of the cel-shaded nature. And I don't think that's super fair. Coral takes everything that's wonderful about a farmer and makes it better. It's like they listen to all the complaints about farmers that just don't really go very well, and they fine-tuned that, and it's not even done. There's so much more that's coming, and I'm really excited to see what the future holds for Coral Island, because as of right now, it's immaculate. Next we have Animal Crossing New Horizons. Now this is way past its heyday, but it's still a really strong game. I spent a lot of time last year working on my island, and if you followed me for a long time, you know that I've been in a constant state of flux with my island, never really quite getting it done. I love this game, and I'm super endeared to it, and I think I'll always love Animal Crossing New Horizons. I think it's really strong. It's definitely missing a few of my favorite features, like why isn't Nooks any bigger? Why did that never upgrade? That's like base game from OG Animal Crossing. Why did we never really get dialogue updates? And all the furniture and the designing of the Happy Home Paradise Island is perfect. I just feel like it's missing one or two small elements that I think would make it spectacular. But overall, it's strong, and I'm happy to get into more gameplay with Animal Crossing in the new year because I'm not done. I'm not even near done. I have over 3,000 hours in this game, and I'm not finished. How is that possible? Next up is Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and this is a game that I play every single week, sometimes multiple times. And Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is really strong. There's a lot of problems, like why is Yoshi, Birdo, Peach, and Daisy the strongest racers in the game? It doesn't really incentivize you to play as anyone else, and as someone who loves Luigi, he simply can't keep up with Yoshi. And that sucks. And that's one of the biggest problems with the game. I think the DLC really boosted so much life, and I was kind of hoping that this year we would have gotten at least one more DLC pack with maybe 4 more pre's. Keep an eye on my channel because I'm building an entire set of new DLC with tracks that they could have used in order to build something brand new, and I'm really excited to get that out. I love Mario Kart 8 Deluxe with all of my heart. I love playing it. I love the strategy. I love challenging myself and getting better every time. And that's what I think I respond to the most about it. Next is Baldur's Gate 3, and my god, this is the most perfect game I've ever played in my life. I didn't think I was gonna like a game like this. I thought I was gonna like the dialogue and I would like the story around it, because when I gravitate towards a game, I really am looking for the story. I'm looking for the world building. I'm looking for the excitement, that wow factor. And Baldur's has the wow. It's like Arby's. It has the meat. It really does. Have you seen Halson? And this is a great game for a lot of reasons. One, it's got a bunch of D&D content, which not everybody likes D&D. For me, I like the idea of D&D, but I've never actually done it myself. I've never gotten into it, and I don't see myself ever sitting down and doing a one-shot. I know of turn-based battles from playing Knights of the Old Republic, but I've never done anything like this before. And this game was stunning. From the visuals all the way down to the battle system. Baldur's Gate 3 really has something special, and there's a reason it won Game of the Year. If you take a good concept and you refine it and make a flawless game, release it at launch at a fair price with no hidden features to make the game better, no strange paywalls or DLC in order to compete with everyone else or to unlock certain dialogue, you've got a really great soup for something flawless. And that's what this game is. I'm only about halfway through, if even that, and I already know that I want to do another run, maybe even 2. This game has taken up so many hours of my life, and I'm not even close to being done with it. Typically with a game like this, I would be kind of over it and over spending this many hours, especially in something that's so story heavy, but I want to keep digging in and getting more. I just don't have enough. I feel like a bottom, asking for more, and I just want more from this game. Next up is Fortnite, and you know what? Fortnite's pretty strong. It's a solid game. I got nothing bad to say about it. I like that it's free to play. I like that you can have so much time with friends in it. I might not play it that much because it's not really a game that's my speed, but I can appreciate it nonetheless. Next up is Dead Man's Rest. This is a visual novel set in ye old Wild West times, where you are an in-the-closet gay cowboy who is on your way to avenge the death of someone very close to you. Throughout your adventure, you meet a couple different people that you can romance along the way. I really enjoyed the story. I thought it was cute. It has a lot of deep dive conversations in history that I don't think people really want to talk about, especially with the mistreatment of Native Americans. Talking about queerness and talking about what that means in another cultural setting all the way back then is fun to learn. And as someone who's a big nerd for history, I appreciated what this game had to offer. What I didn't appreciate is that there is a very racist character and you can romance them depending on how you play the game, and I don't like that. So for me, that could have made the game better if that wasn't included. Next is The Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog. This is a great game. I almost don't want to tell any of you what it's about. And now that I've put it in strong, I'm putting it at Immaculate Vibes. If you're a fan of Sonic the Hedgehog, you need to play this game, because it's completely free to play. Without spoiling too much, Amy is hosting a birthday party, and it is a murder mystery theme, where someone is getting murdered. It's a point and click, visual novel, story heavy, with some very easy gameplay mechanics. I never found myself getting frustrated, wondering what I was supposed to click next. The rhythm is really quick. The pacing is nice, and the dialogue is fun. I wish that maybe there was an extra character or two that showed up, but that's such a minor complaint. Next is Spirit of the Island. This was a game that got gifted to me. I'm gonna put it at could have been better because I found myself struggling a lot with the buttons. I got gifted the Switch version, and the Switch version I don't think was optimized, because a lot of it's very confusing. You press one button thinking it's gonna bring you to something, and it's actually another button, and then you press another button thinking that it's what you're supposed to press, but it's not. There's all these weird pages for building, and then placing, and then moving, and then inventory, and then talking, and everything just sort of felt repetitive after a while. It became a slog to keep playing. I like the survival element of it, and I want to keep playing it and I want to enjoy it, but a lot of the gameplay on Switch just is really weak. But it seems like a fun story with cute and quirky design. It seems like it's gotten a lot of visual interest, and I want to love it. But right now, mechanically, I don't. Ooh, next up is Sherlock Holmes The Awakened. It is an interpretation of a Sherlock story that includes some H.P. Lovecraft, Cthulhu, end of the world type concepts. It was made by the same developers, if I'm not mistaken, of The Sinking City. If I'm mistaken on this and I'm incorrect, please don't yell at me in the comments. I think it is. Sinking City was one of my favorite random open world adventure story mystery games, and I turned up to that game. It had a lot of charm despite a lot of its mechanical issues. Sherlock the Awakened had all of the bad mechanics of Sinking City times 2, and I didn't think it could get much worse. The movement is awkward, the camera angles are awkward, the way you interact with the world is awkward, and a lot of things that you'd think would make sense just don't. I found myself a lot of the times just wandering around in circles, wondering where I was supposed to go, wondering what I was supposed to do. Why am I here? Why am I interacting with this object? How many times could I possibly listen to this one piece of dialogue again and again and again before it stops? You know what? I'm moving this down into it had a lot of personality, because even the ending had me feeling very disappointed. When it all ended and the resolve happened, I thought, what was the point in this? What did I do all this for? It didn't feel like it went anywhere, and that was disappointing to me. Next up is Lake Season's Greeting DLC. This is not Lake, the game. It's a DLC add-on that I was reached out to play. And I promise, they didn't pay me a penny. I asked, but they didn't give me any money. Lake Season's Greetings was so good. If you like the original game, which the original is a task simulator. If you don't know what a task sim is, basically the idea is you're going from route to route to route, doing a task. Similar to a life sim, but instead of needing to eat or cook or meet people, a task sim more follows a linear story that you are interacting along with. Similar, but very different from something like Unpacking, where you're learning the story as you go, and you're completing a task of taking out your clothes and putting them away, but you're not necessarily doing that much. You don't have a lot of agency over what packages or what mail you deliver, and that's fine because the story is so good. You're just along for the ride. And I like that. Lake Season's Greetings was so cute because you get to see the prequel to the game, and if you don't know anything about the game, you are missing out on a fantastic simulation game. And if you're interested in seeing a little bit of the DLC, I included a very silly edit and run here on my YouTube, which you can go back. There are 3 parts of the Lake DLC. You can find the entire thing. I don't have all the cutscenes. You can still explore it for yourself and see my heinous reaction to the game. I kind of tackled it like GTA, hitting pedestrians, running into walls, making illegal turns. It was a hoot. Season's Greeting DLC was top tier. Next was Sons of the Forest. So I played on Bitch Baby Easy mode because life is hard. Life is really hard. Life is expensive and life is complicated. And I'm not here to have complicated gameplay as well. Sons of the Forest is a sequel to The Forest. You play as a dude who gets crashed on an island with a very sexy dude who can't hear or talk to you, so you have to communicate via notes. I don't really know what the story was because I didn't have any opposition. I don't like horror, but this game was purchased for me, so I wanted to play it. And I'll be honest, I think it needed a bigger brain than what I have. My ability to build felt a little troubled. I think if I understood some of the more deep mechanics of the game, of how to move one log from one side of the island all the way to the other via a zip line like I've seen on TikTok, I think it would have had an easier time, but I always just seem to struggle a little bit, and I don't like to struggle. I'm here for low effort. I've got Wolf Among Us is another game that I played, and this was super strong. It's a retelling of a storybook world, and it's all in that comic book style. I believe it's made by Telltale, and they are the same company that made the Walking Dead series. Not the TV show, the game. And the game is so good, and so is Wolf Among Us. There's a lot of choices matter. There's a big, dark world, similar to Once Upon a Time, but diving in even deeper. And these are classic fairy tale characters. It was fun to figure out who was who, and there's a great twist at the end that I was not expecting at all. If you haven't played this already, it's such a good game that I almost want to put it on Immaculate Vibes. I think the only reason why I didn't is because I found myself not loving certain camera angles, but it's such a small complaint. That's tiny. That's minuscule. That's not that big of a deal. I'm going to put it all the way at the very front because I think it deserves that. Next is The Quarry, which is a super massive game if I'm not mistaken. The Quarry is it's a game that's a spiritual successor to Until Dawn. What I love about this game is how likable the cast is. In Until Dawn, I found myself kind of hating everyone. I kind of wanted everyone to die. But in The Quarry, I want to save them all. Really, the only issue is that the prologue goes on for so long before any real action has happened. There's a little bit of choices matter in the first few chapters. But for the most part, chapter 1 through 4 are pretty landlocked. And then chapter 6, while really fun, doesn't really give that much to the game. And I don't know if it's got as much replayability as it wants to have. Which is why I think it's strong. I don't think it's bad. I think it's really good. I wish that it had more replay value, and then it would have gone to Immaculate Vibes. But this is a great game, and if I'm being honest, Brenda Song is really the draw for me. She's so fierce in the game, and it's such a joy to watch her act. I loved it. This is a great game. Next up is a Roller Coaster Tycoon Classic. I'm gonna put it at had lots of personality because the game just wasn't optimized. This is a game from my childhood that I sunk so many hours, hundreds of hours into as a kid. And I wanted to love it, but it crashed. A lot. Like a lot. I think at one point I was in the middle of building this beautiful, spectacular amusement park, and the game randomly just crashed. For no reason. Nothing happened. And I went on the forums and I found a lot of people were having the same issues. That people said basically save every 5 minutes if you like your theme park. I spent at one point hours into a theme park and I forgot to save, and it crashed and I lost every will to pick the game back up. And since then I haven't touched it. If this game ever got optimized properly, I would pick it back up. But the problem with a lot of these older games being brought back into the now, so they're just not ready to be on current systems. I don't know what that is that a new system can't be backwards compatible with something old. Because in my brain, something that's low tech should work perfectly on something that's high tech. But I'm not a tech bro and I don't understand these things. Next up is Idol Manager, and this is such a damn good game. It's a management system that is based on J-idols. So if you like J-idols, this is fun because there's a lot of interesting storylines you might actually see happen in a real J scandal. And if you don't know what a J-idol is, it's a Japanese idol group. The idea is that they take girls who are young up to like maybe 13 or 12, all the way up to ages 21, and try to mold them into someone really famous and charismatic and popular so that people will want to buy their music and they root for them, not because they're the best singers in the world, but because they've got a lot of personality and a lot of heart and enthusiasm in what they're selling. And this is such a fun game because you get to see that fleshed out. And I've been doing my own little gameplay of it now that I've really been very excited to share, and I hope that someday I'll be able to actually get to do that. It is very tough as far as management sims are concerned. If you've ever played anything management sim adjacent, I'm telling you, this is the hardest one. I have never played a management sim this complicated. Next is Ravenbound. This is a game that again was gifted to me. It was a really good game. It's a roguelite with a big open world style similar to something like Elder Scrolls. Aesthetically, beautiful world. And its hook is that when you go to certain points, you turn into a raven and can traverse the map. So it sort of makes the map feel a lot smaller. It makes it feel less massive. I'm normally not a roguelite type person. I normally don't enjoy games like Souls, where if you die, you reset. But this game had me hooked from the start because of the aesthetics. It also has a fun card system, so as you progress through the game, you collect more cards that make you stronger, and that's the way they tackle the Souls-like element. I think the only thing I would have maybe liked is maybe a little more dialogue, maybe a little more character customization, and maybe feeling like everything wasn't so minuscule in the grand scheme of things. It didn't really feel like the story made that much sense to me. I felt like I was lost in my motivation, and I was sort of just doing the game because it told me to, not because I actually wanted to. And I would have liked to feel like I really wanted to do it. Next up is Raft, and I'm gonna say that this is a strong game if you play with friends. I don't know if I would have enjoyed Raft alone. Raft is a survival game where you start in the middle of the ocean on a singular piece of wood, and you have to collect items and build up your raft and find out where the utopia is. You have this shark that's constantly chasing you that is such an annoyance. It is constantly eating at your boat, ruining your progress and destroying everything. The mats are very difficult to come by, and normally that's not a bad thing to feel so hard. But this one felt so hard. Not that I wanted it to be easier, but I certainly would not have had any fun if I was solo. This game felt better with friends. I loved the story, and it made me emotional. It just felt so good to complete it. And that's what I liked about it. Next up is Cult of the Lamb, and this is such a good game. Again, another roguelite. There's a lot of dungeon crawling. There's a lot of integration that you can use if you're a Twitch streamer, which I love. That made me so happy to see. This, I played a lot when it first released, and then I played more last year, and I'm playing more this year. Overall, very solid game. I don't have a ton to say about it because I think it's just fun. If you haven't played Cult of the Lamb, I think you really should check it out. It's got a lot of great charm points, and I think the story of fighting these big gods as a small, tiny creature that gets stronger and stronger and is literally building a cult of other animals to take down the gods is incredible. This is a good game. Next up is Dying Light, and I know that I'm years away from this game's release, and people probably don't care about Dying Light, and that was kind of reflected with my Twitch chat, as a lot of people really didn't care that much about it. It had a lot of the same vibes as Dead Island, and I loved Dead Island. It was a great game when it came out. I get frustrated with weapon breakdown, and I didn't like that. I also didn't like the agency in the story. I didn't feel like I had any of it. I felt like the story was happening to me and I couldn't control anything. And I don't like that. I like a linear game and I can totally get into one, but I've got to want to do the things that it's asking me to do. And this game made me mad so many points. There were times where I knew a special zombie was in an area and my character would say, "What is that?" As if we hadn't already seen that special zombie before. And then I'd get knocked into a big raid battle where I was just fighting hordes and hordes of zombies unnecessarily. I loved the memeability of blowing up zombies with a gas tank. But then there were other points where I would just die for no reason because some random explosion that I didn't cause. And then suddenly I had to reset and I lost a bunch of my items. The parkour system is perfect. I really enjoy that element a lot. I thought a lot of the late game weapons were really fun to play with, but a lot of the early parts felt like a slog. It was still really good, and I wanted it to be more. Next is City Skylines, and this is the game that knocks SimCity out of the water for a very good reason. I know there's a second game, and I haven't played it. I've been really attached to the first one. I like all the chaos you can cause in it. This is an excellent game if you like a city builder, if you like a simulation in general, which a lot of these games have simulation vibes. I like how easy it is to pick up, and I like that it doesn't feel super punishing, even if you have to reset a couple times. I definitely went through maybe 5 or 6 or 10 playthroughs before I really got the hang of it, but those playthroughs went by really fast and I didn't ever feel like I was struggling that hard. Because when you finally get it down, it feels really rewarding. When you finally are not red for hours on end of gameplay and you're in the green and your city is thriving and doing really well, it feels rewarding. Next is Dead by Daylight, and this is a game that I love to hate. There's so many issues with DBD as a game and the health of the community right now. The last time I played was this killer, and I felt like the community was really broken. I'm the type of gamer that if I feel other people are not having fun in a party system, I don't have fun. Every time I've ever opened my mouth about things that I think could make Dead by Daylight better, I get called an idiot. So I'm gonna keep my opinion short and sweet. I love this game, and I hate how much I like it. Next up is Ghostwire Tokyo, and God, I loved this game so much. I want to put it at Immaculate Vibes, but the only reason why I'm not is the inability to go into third-person view. I understand why you're in first person because you're in a parkour system, very similar to Dying Light. But it would have been nice to be able to escape that, because sometimes first person gets a little disorienting, especially when you're parkouring and jumping up on things, and suddenly there's a big object right in your face and then it's not there anymore. This game was excellent for the exploration of Tokyo, specifically of Shibuya. It was a beautiful game. I loved every aspect of it, and I loved that the story was developing as you went. The magic system was fun, the combat system was fun, I never found myself getting upset. And I like the elements of meeting new ghosts that scare you. There were a couple points where I genuinely got jump scared. And that was such a cool feeling. As someone who loves Japan so much and loved traveling around Shibuya, I loved this game. There are no critiques that I have, story or gameplay wise, other than I wish that you could go into third person mode just to escape that kind of close, cramped feeling. Next up is Night in the Woods, and this is an immaculate game. Night in the Woods is essentially an interactive visual novel. It's side-scroller style, so you're going through the world and interacting with people how you want to, and the people that you choose to interact with will help flesh out your story, at least what you will experience. You'll really only learn more if you want to learn more. The story tackles mental health, it tackles family issues, it tackles queer issues. This is the first video game that has made me genuinely sob to the point where I had to stop and really compose myself. There's a moment where you learn some backstory about one of the queer characters in the game, and it was so impactful. This is one of my favorite games to play, and I've done probably 5 runs already of it, because it's just that good. The main character, Mei, is super relatable, and I have so many theories about the game itself, and what it's trying to tell you, and what it all means, but I can leave that for another time, if you're interested. The stories are compelling, the town is compelling, and as someone who grew up in a small town with a lot of that small town ideology, I enjoyed every second of this game. Big recommend if you like visual novels, and if you like something with a lot of heart. That's what Night in the Woods has. So much heart. Next up is Fallout 4, and this is a very genuinely strong game. I've played Fallout so many times, I don't even know if I have words anymore to explain the game itself or why I like it, other than it's just a really solid Bethesda game. I played with a lot of mods, and I plan on picking it back up at some point this year with even more mods, and I just love it. Last year, I finished Let's Go Eevee, and this is a very strong game. You can find my entire gameplay here on YouTube. There's an entire playlist for my Let's Go series. I enjoyed this game, and I love steamrolling through it, and I actually cried at the end this time. My only real complaint is the go system, and that's because my gyro is broken, and so throwing Pokeballs, they would often go in the wrong direction. Even though I was pointing forward, it would go off to the right. That's a Nintendo issue, and I'm glad that I finally finished it. The next up is King of the Castle. This is a super interactive game. You can play solo, but the main idea is that you play it on Twitch with your Twitch community. You are the emperor of a kingdom. There are 3 factions who are vying against you to take control of your seat in power. I lose every time, but I always have fun with it. And it's fun to see people's competition come out as the game develops. There's a lot of story and a lot of reading, so if you're a Twitch streamer who doesn't like to read, you probably won't like this game. You can play it completely on your own though, and you don't need anybody else to help you. I think everything just sort of plays around you, but I haven't actually done it solo yet. Fantastic game. The only reason why it's not an Immaculate Vibes is only because I don't think it's that easy for the Monarch to win. At least not in my experience. Maybe I just haven't figured it out, and that could be a part of the learning curve. Maybe next year, if I have this again on my list, I'll rank it higher. Next up is First Bite, and this is a super NSFW visual novel based on vampires. Do not play this game if you do not like adult themes, because it was very sexy. I don't think there was any nudity or any bodily fluids that were exchanged of the adult variety, but there was a lot of implied and outright stated sexuality. I love the game for a lot of different reasons. One, all 3 of the vampires are super sexy. 2, all of them have incredible storylines that you can learn as you get to know them. There's a little bit of punishment if you don't do the game right, that you could die and you'll have to restart again, but it's really easy to keep saving and go back to a save point and then maybe redo your actions. I've enjoyed every route that I've done so far, and so far there's only one character I haven't been able to successfully romance. And that's because they're genuinely very hard to impress. They're like Shania. They're just not impressed that much. I don't even know why this is not an immaculate game. Maybe it's the visuals. The visuals get a little bit stale after a while. That's the only thing that keeps it from being an immaculate game. There's not a lot of diversity with the art. It sort of is one static image with the character emoting, and that's not bad. It's not horrible, but it does get stale. Other than that, this is a pretty fantastic game. Next up is Red Dead Redemption 2, and this might be an immaculate game. Is it? It is. This is one of the best open world games that I've ever played in my entire life. There's so much happening. Your choices actually affect the rest of the overworld. Certain choices that you make to improve buildings or talk with certain people have consequences outside of where you're at. My only real problem, if I had to pick one, and it's just me being picky, is that I can literally get jumped by some random person in the middle of the city. They can come and hustle me and say that they don't like me, and they can come and shoot me or stab me, and the moment I retaliate back, the police are called and I'm arrested and the whole law is chasing after me. But they can pull their gun out in the middle of public and it's not a problem. That's my only real problem, if you can call that one. Next is KOTOR 2 The Sith Lords, and this is another strong game. I already referenced it earlier when I was talking about Baldur's Gate. The only reason why it's not immaculate, as I remember it being when I was a kid, is because it's just not optimized at all. As a matter of fact, it could have been a lot better. This was one of those games that I loved as a kid, and I still love it. This is one of the best stories that I've ever played in my life. It's got a lot of character development, but the slightest breeze will kill this game and kick it right off your computer. And that's super frustrating, and it doesn't make for a fun experience. Next is the Dark Pictures anthology Little Hope. And I liked this game a lot. I know it comes under a lot of heat for maybe being a little bit unsatisfying at the end. For me, as someone who studied psychology and mental health, I really liked it. Thought it was cool. Thought it had a fun story. I thought there was a lot that it had to offer. I'm gonna be playing House of Ash at some point this coming year, and I'm very excited about that. Little Hope was fun though. I enjoyed piecing together where I thought everything linked up, and finding out the ending was really satisfying for me. Next up is Stardew Valley. This is a really strong game, damn near perfect. If there was just a little more diversity and inclusion in the game, I think I'd probably put it at immaculate. I mentioned with Coral Island that the world looks different than what video games often try to make it be. It's not just all thin and white. And a lot of characters in Stardew Valley are thin and white. And they all look really young. So this redefined the farmer genre. And I think that that should be acknowledged, that this is something that has really defined what that's supposed to look like. But it definitely has its flaws still. And I think the diversity and inclusion is one of those. Next up, we have Paleo Pines, which I spoke very highly of in my review. And I still hold by Paleo Pines being a strong game. I love the dinosaur aspect to it. I think there's a lot of fun elements to it. My problem is that my character feels really young, almost like a kid, and I don't like that. I want to be able to play a farmer game knowing that I'm an adult and casually, in my head, flirting with all the other farmers in the area. And I think my farmer was a kid. I love the dinosaurs, and I love the use of them and having different powers to help you navigate the world around you. I think the farmer elements are decent, and I think the world exploration is decent, and I think that's really the problem. It's decent. I don't think it's spectacular. I don't think it's doing anything super new or groundbreaking that I've never seen somewhere else besides having dinosaurs. But that's the draw. The draw is the dinosaurs. Not necessarily the amazing gameplay or graphics that you're getting. And that's where it falters, is that it's not spectacular, but it's good. It just could maybe have been a little bit better. Next up is Minecraft, and this is just a very solid, strong game. I mentioned this game earlier as well. There's a lot of things that kind of overlap with my gameplay styles. Minecraft is pretty wonderful. It's pretty perfect. I think the only reason it's not in Immaculate Vibes is because I don't even know. It's immaculate. You know what? I like the ability to be able to free play and not be tied to a sort of survival aspect, that you can create a seeded world however you want to, and then you just get to play how you want. I like that. Next is Resident Evil 4, and goddamn, I think I'm gonna put this in Immaculate Vibes. I think so. This was a great remake. Resident Evil 4 has so much heart and soul, and easily is one of the best Resident Evil games that I've played. And I really enjoyed 3, but this game was chef's kiss perfect. I don't think I had a singular problem with it. I loved the story, I loved the gameplay elements, I loved the battle system, I loved the twists, I loved Ada Wong. I really liked Ashley, and people told me I wasn't gonna like her. I also had her as a panda in my gameplay, so maybe that helped. And Leon was also in underwear through almost the entirety of the game. This is a perfect game. No critiques. 10 out of 10. Next is a very silly point-and-click game that's called My Ex-Boyfriend the Space Tyrant. How do I even explain this game? Homosexual, monster fucker, silly. It's very silly. You gotta like a point-and-click for this. There's a couple mechanical issues that come with point-and-click games, but as far as queer stories are concerned, this is one of the silliest queer games that I've ever played. It was so funny. It was so interesting. It had so much heart and soul. There were a couple elements that I just didn't love, and that was mostly in gameplay. There was one particular segment that I got stuck on for an hour and had to look up 2 whole guides just to figure out how to progress through one room because it didn't make any sense, and when I finally did, it made me mad. That's really the only reason why it didn't fall into Immaculate. And everything I read said that most people felt that way. Next is The Sims 4, and my god, this is a game that really lowers the bar. Every update. Every time that The Sims updates, it gets worse. It breaks mods, it breaks the community, another paywall, another microtransaction. It's really frustrating. I love my Sims playthroughs and I love my stories that I do, but I don't like the way that EA has set up this game. I also hate the EA app with a burning passion. Why can't I play offline? Why do I have to log in and make sure that the internet knows that I'm playing the game? Why is it that if I want to play offline, the game simply won't open? Every other game that doesn't require online will open. The Sims 4 does not. I love The Sims, I love the franchise, and I want more life simulations that are not made by EA. Can we do that? Next we have Spiritfarer, and I might have to put this in the #1 spot because Spiritfarer was darn near one of the most perfect farm sims that I've ever played in my life. And I do consider this a farm sim because the game revolves around you farming. You can do a lot of stuff, but without farming, you don't have a game. And the core tenet of a farm sim is that the world revolves around your farm succeeding. You can't feed your boat denizens, and you can't make food, and you can't progress the story without farming. It's a key tenet of the game. If you don't know anything about Spiritfarer, it is a game where you are the newest Grim Reaper with your own boat, ferrying people to the other side and connecting them to their death so that they can move on to their light and have a happy ending. Even talking about this game and thinking about it is making me want to cry because this was such a beautiful game. In every sense of the word, it was a beautiful game. Every time that one of the spirits moved on, I cried. And one of the biggest moments that had me in hysterics sobbing was a point where one of the characters said, "I guess I should forgive my father, huh?" And then got her lights, gives you a hug, and moves on. And I can't explain why that touched me, but it did. I love this game so much, and even thinking about it now is making my heart swell with so much joy and pain and happiness and sadness at the same time, because it was immaculate. It's a side-scroller game, so you don't have to worry about all this depth of field. You get to just enjoy the beautiful music, the gameplay itself, plus you get to hug your cat. Beautiful stories all around the board with eccentric characters that really just flesh out this world. Beautiful game. Next up is Spyro, and this was a remastered version that was gifted to me. I finally played it. It took me a year to pick it up, and it was great. I never played Spyro when I was a kid, and playing it as an adult with only having seen maybe like my uncle play or maybe picking it up once or twice at a Best Buy, it was cool to see. I didn't get to play this when I was a kid because I don't think we had the system for it, but I loved this. It was fun, and I can't wait to do more. Next is a remake of a game that I played when I was a kid. This is Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life. This game made me cry. I want to move it towards the top because it was so good. I turn up to a farm sim. I turn up to something that really defined the genre. When you look at something like Coral Island or Stardew Valley, Paleo Pines, Spiritfarer, these games that rely on farming in order to progress the story, Harvest Moon defined that genre. You were a dweeb nerd if you liked farmers when I was a kid. And I'm so glad that the farm sim is having a resurgence and is a cool, trendy thing right now. What I don't like is people comparing things to other games. So when I played A Wonderful Life, people said, oh my god, it's like Stardew Valley. Wrong, Barbara. Stardew Valley is like A Wonderful Life. This just happens to be a remake of a very old game. And I loved this game when I was a kid. It optimized every single problem about the original game, but there were definitely a couple things here and there that were still an issue, like Vinny. Vinny was horrendously obnoxious, and I wish I never had to interact with him ever. Other than that, this was a great game, and I loved the inclusivity of letting you romance whoever you wanted and being able to choose your own pronouns. I almost 100%ed the game, and I only have one task left to do, and I felt like it was completely worth it. I loved this game, and I would play it 1,000 times over if I could. Next up is Jedi Survivor, and this is a great game. I didn't play that much of it because, to be honest, I got distracted with other games. Not because Jedi Survivor was bad, but just because I got distracted. I spent a long time trying to mod Cal's clothes off, and when I finally did that and I saw his butt, I don't think I had a lot of motivation to keep going. Most of my gameplay was built to try and find a certain costume so I could take his clothes off, and that was with the use of a mod. I'm gonna go back in at some point this year and finish it, and I plan on doing that, and I'm gonna sit down and force myself to do it. Not because it's a bad game and I have to force myself to play, but there's just so many other games that I like even more. But this is a solidly strong game. Next up is Tell Me Why, which features very prominently a trans male character, and it was such a beautiful game with so much story and so much light and so much love. I love just about everything in this game, and of course the last act has a big twist that changes everything you think you know. I don't really think there's any negatives about this game. Maybe a couple gameplay issues weren't my favorite thing in the world. Maybe controlling a little bit of the story wasn't the most fun experience in my life. And it suddenly and randomly gets a really odd puzzle in the 4th act. But it was still a strong game. Next up is Elder Scrolls Skyrim, and this is a game much like Fallout that I could play with my eyes closed. I've played it so many times. It has no real bearing on my life anymore, but I'm still super obsessed with Skyrim all these years later, and I swear Bethesda could come out with a smart fridge version of Skyrim, and I would buy it. I think counting, we probably have 7 total copies of Skyrim in our apartment right now. 1 on my Switch, 1 on my husband's Switch, 1 on my PC, 1 on my husband's PC, 1 on our PlayStation, 1 on our Xbox, and I think there might even be a regular or a special edition duplicate on one of those systems. Next was Walking Dead Chapter 2, and it was nice to see Clementine have a little more agency this time around. I really didn't turn up to a lot of the elements in it. I found myself getting annoyed, especially with some of the main characters. And some of my favorites died, while others, especially really annoying ones, lived. I couldn't get into it. Next is Life is Strange True Colors, and I have no bad things to say about this game. God, what a good game. What a fantastically beautiful game. Thinking about it makes me want to get emotional and cry. The queerness of this story, the route of dealing with grief and loss, coming out, being comfortable with yourself, abandonment issues, family issues, choosing to resolve that or not resolve that hurt. God, it's so good. Next is Firewatch, and this is another pretty flawless game. It's about a 5 or 6 hour journey depending on how much you want to devote into it. It's all story based. The story happens around you and you can explore. It's very similar to something like Night in the Woods, where you've got a little agency to move around the world, but the story is going to happen regardless, and it just depends on how fast you want to progress it. It had a beautiful story from start to finish, from the main character and what his background and story is, to the other person on the other side of the radio that you meet. Firewatch is a game about a man who escapes some of his problems by going and living at a fire watchtower in the forest for a couple of months while he figures out his life and what he wants to do next. And while you're there, some weird stuff starts to happen, and the story resolves and you find out why those weird things have been happening. This is a great game that left me feeling so many different ways. A lot of games like this don't let you feel accomplished by the end of it, and I fully did. I felt accomplished by the end. I felt like my journey meant something. And that's what I want from a game like this, that's so story-driven and narrative-driven. There's a lot of talking, so if you don't like games that have a lot of dialogue, this might not be a game for you. But if you want a solid built game with a great story and a prominent narrative through and through, this is the game for you. Next up is Plague Tale Requiem, and I was very late to playing this game as well, but I was very happy with it. It was a lovely second game to the first Plague Tale Innocence. The growth of Amicia and Hugo from the first game to this one is so nice to see. Their bond as siblings as they fight this inevitable curse that is taking over Hugo's life. If you've never seen the first game and you don't mind some plague and rat and some sort of gritty and gross gameplay, then you'll probably turn up to this game. A lot of people didn't really like the rats or how vile it was because it can get a little bit graphic as far as body horror is concerned, but I kind of turned up to it. There's a moment where you're running across this building and the town is falling apart because of this rat infestation. It's impossible to explain that rush of seeing everything get destroyed as you're running and feeling helpless to do anything other than to flee. There are a lot of great puzzle elements to the game, which is one of my favorite parts of it. I love trying to figure out how to get through an area because it feels like old school gaming where you have to solve a problem in order to get through. You can't just push your way through it. And because you're a kid, your unique problem is not being able to just muscle your way through a group of big dudes. You have to think smarter about how you're going to combat the enemies you're facing. And they make it much more difficult than in the first game to just power and bulk your way through a problem. A lot of the really good elements from the first game, they translated wonderfully into this one. I think really my only problem is that some of the puzzles started to feel a little repetitive and I didn't find myself always wanting to do them. It sort of felt in a couple of places like, okay, well, let's get this done so I can progress, so I can get to the next area, so I can see it. I was more interested in the visuals of the game rather than some of the puzzle elements. And the game tells you from the very beginning what's going to happen. And so there's not really a surprise twist at the end. And with that, that is my ranking list of every single game that I played in 2023. And my God, I've been recording for an hour and 15 minutes. I'm sure this is going to be a long one, so if you've made it this far into the video, thank you for sticking around through it. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you've been following my Twitch and my YouTubes and have seen a lot of these gameplays, I hope you enjoyed the gameplay of them. And hopefully it helps clarify how I feel about some of these games post. I realized I didn't need the wasn't great category, but if I was going to put any of them here, it would have been some of the mobiles that I played last year. I don't think any of these games would have ever made it on the wasn't great list. Maybe Roller Coaster Tycoon, purely because of the gameplay issues, but I couldn't put it down there. It's too good of a game. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Make sure to check out some of my other content. I've been putting out a lot of gaming content, been putting out a lot of drag race content if you're interested in that, and I've got even more things coming down the pipe. See you soon. Goodbye. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, make sure to click that like button. And if you want to see more, hit subscribe. Goodbye.